Everybody, welcome back to Ox Talks. Appreciate you tuning into the show today. Very, very important current news going on right now. I want to share with you one topic, and that's this East Coast looming port shutdown that could impact all of us. Before I start, thank you for, again, showing up today and hitting the play button. Please also like the videos, hit the thumbs up button, share the videos, people that you know far and wide. And also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. Let me jump right into the story. I've pulled several different news sources about the same topic, and that is this looming shipping port shutdown across the eastern coast of the United States. And I pulled some excerpts from the CNBC News story on it. I pulled some from Reuters and also a story from Zero Hedge Today. So it says 5 billion per day nightmare looms amid rising risk of a paralyzing U.S. port strike. And the Zero Hedge article starts out by saying, if the International Longshoremen's Association, the ILA, and the U.S. Maritime Alliance, the USMX, a coalition of port operators and carriers, failed to reach a new contract agreement in 3 days, or by the end of September 30th at midnight, a strike along the East and Gulf Coast ports could erupt, jeopardizing $5 billion in daily international trade. Let me jump over to the CBS News article real quickly. It says the ports could close in a strike that handle more than 68% of all containerized exports in the United States and roughly 56% of containerized imports, right? So more than half of the imports in this country come through the ports that are in jeopardy of literally shutting down, according to industry data. So even a short strike, it says, would cause significant disruptions in regional trade flows. One analysis estimates they could cost the United States economy as much as $5 billion per day. It says, for example, heavier vehicle traffic is likely at key points around the nation as freight is diverted to West Coast ports, which then, of course, has to be put on trucks out of the West Coast ports, has to be put on rail lines out of the West Coast ports. It says, for every day of a port strike, listen to this, it would take 4 to 6 days to catch up the backlog in ships. Although West Coast terminals could absorb some cargo diverted from eastern ports, they couldn't handle all of it, nor could the United States rail system handle it, experts say. Should a strike persist longer than a month, some companies could face shortages of parts and other inputs. The auto and pharmaceutical industries, which maintain lean inventories, could be particularly affected. Exports of cars and other products that are moved through the East Coast could also be impacted. So in addition, a strike could hamper shipments of products such as bananas, manufacturing components, and plywood, interrupting the flow both of consumer goods and industrial parts for factories. Fresh meat and other refrigerated food could spoil, resulting in shortages and increased prices. The author says, I think everyone's a bit nervous about it. This is Mia Ginter, Director of North American Ocean Shipping for C.H. Robinson, a logistics company. The rhetoric this time with the ILA is at levels we haven't seen before. And I saw a statistic. This would be the first East Coast port strike, if it happens, since 1977. Okay, so you got to go back a long way before something like this, or to a time when something like this unfolded. And of course, back then, the economy, the level of imports, exports, rail traffic, trucking cargo was a lot less in the late 70s than it is now. It says the ripple effects of a strike would affect other related work, especially in warehousing and transport, meaning up to 105,000 workers could find themselves temporarily out of work, estimates Oxford Economics. The labor dispute says also comes at a time when the Federal Reserve is closely monitoring the labor market for signs of weakening. So talk about job impacts just to not only the longshoremen and the people that work at the ports that will no longer be on the job and be on strike, but everybody else's job who would be impacted by supply chain disruptions, supply chain delays, warehouse people, transportation people. This thing could literally unfold into a nightmare, guys. Reuters says analysts at Sea Intelligence, a Copenhagen-based shipping advisory firm, estimated it could take anywhere from 4 to 6 days to clear the backlog from a one-day strike. We discussed that. A 2-week strike would mean the ports would not return to normal operations until 2025. Goods coming in from Europe, India, and other countries, it says, that rely on direct routes across the Atlantic would be most heavily affected, transportation experts said. And we know how much stuff floods into this country every day from other countries, right? I mean, we rely on that to stock our store shelves, stock our warehouses for the stuff that Americans, consume each and every day. It says, back to the Zero Hedge article. Anyway, let me just take a step back. When I say prepare now in the thumbnail, think about this now, okay? I'm not saying it's panic time. What I'm saying is if this strike happens as of midnight on the 30th of September, today's the 26th, all right? You've got 4 days to go out, maybe get some extra food in the pantry, maybe get some extra meat in the freezer, maybe get, if you are looking to buy some clothing items, things like that, maybe get that stuff in the next few days. If you need some extra parts for the vehicle that you need laying around, belts, things like that, oil, whatever, maybe you think about getting some of that stuff now. Obviously, if the strike happens, and we have some contingencies, right? But if it happens, and they're saying rhetoric is as bad as they've ever seen it. So if it unfolds this way, we are in a very unknown, I say uncharted, no pun intended, uncharted waters, right? So all I'm saying is we talk about preparedness on this channel, being prudent, and you cannot or may not be able to get the things you need, after this if it starts to get really, really bad, okay? So let me continue with the Zero Hedge analysis. Upwards of $4.9 billion per day is at risk in international trade along the East and Gulf coasts, along with potential for supply chains to likely become less fluid due to emergent congestion, which in turn could result in reemergence of transport price inflation. So let's talk about availability of things, which may be impacted, but also the price of things, right? You don't think for a second that the businesses that are impacted by this are not going to turn around and pass all those price increases off to the consumer. They absolutely will, okay? And what's that going to do to inflation on these goods? It says any strike would immediately result in 45,000 ILA workers walking off container ports. And the ports represent 52% of all port traffic in 2023. It says, in other words, again, any disruption would spark massive supply chain snarls for the eastern half of the nation. And like I shared in the first story from CBS, it wouldn't be limited to the East Coast, right? Because the West Coast is going to be overloaded and impacted with rail traffic, with trucks trying to get out of those ports to get stuff all the way across the country. Again, I'm not an expert on this. I'm just sharing with you this story because it appears to be looming, maybe even likely. And so as individual, consumers that we are, citizens of the country, and have family that rely on us and rely on us for support and goods and food, guys, just give it some thought, okay? It potentially could get bad, and we know it could get bad at a time where we have an election coming up very, very quickly. And so there was a comment on this. Says the CEO of Flexport, one of the largest U.S. supply chain logistics operations, recently warned. He says the biggest wild card in the presidential election that nobody's talking about, the looming port strike that could shut down all East and Gulf Coast ports just 36 days before the election. Okay, I'll keep it there today. Please go and look at this stuff. Do some reading on your own. But it is going to happen. If it's going to happen, it's going to be in the next 4 days at midnight on September 30th. So, guys, just act accordingly, adjust accordingly, stay safe. Appreciate all of you being here. Please subscribe and continue supporting the channel. I'll keep coming out here every day, time permitting, and keeping you guys aware of current events. So have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye.